Welcome everyone to the Great Lakes Permaculture Design Collaborative.
We are a trio of permaculturists.
Rhonda Baird from Bloomington, Indiana.
William Faith from Chicago, Illinois.
Milton Dixon from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
We're teaming up to create a hands-on learning experience
that can catapult you into a regenerative practice of your own.
glpdc.info.
We'll send you to the host of our next Permaculture Design certificate course.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here today. And our partner, Rhonda, is having some trouble with her internet connection, so she's going to be in and out a bit. But I expect she will join us as soon as her connection sort of stabilizes a bit. But with that, over to you, Milton.
All right. Well, first, your quick introductions. And maybe even before that, the purpose, kind of the thrust of what we're trying to do today. This is supposed to be a quick lunchtime primer. We've got a very short presentation, and then we can field questions after that. And the whole point of this is Rhonda, William, and I have teamed up, and we're trying to put on permaculture design courses regionally. We just had one in 2016 in Chicago, and so now we're kind of prepping for one in Ann Arbor, or near Ann Arbor. It's going to be at Dawn Farm for 2017. It's a 6-weekend course. This next course is going to be over 5 months, so we're going to have 1 month where we squeeze 2 in. And the 3 presenters here, Rhonda Baird, William Faith, and me, Milton Dixon, are part of the collaborative. So Rhonda is having problems with her with her internet connection, so we're just going to roll with it, and maybe she'll pop her head in here occasionally. But I'm going to take point here and move through this. Anything to add, William?
Oh, I think we're ready to start.
All right, let's go. So just a few short slides, just to we're trying to make one succinct point here. And that is solving problems with permaculture design. Previously we had a primer that went into more what is permaculture and the ethics and principles of permaculture. It's kind of a high level overview. So if you're interested, you can find that on our glpdc.info is the website. That's the place where you can register for the course, see more information about it. And we've got a couple of sample videos up there too, from lectures from the course, the patterns, and the livelihood videos.
Looks like we have Rhonda back.
Hi, Rhonda.
Hi there.
No worries. We're just going to roll with this. Is there a way that you can number one, either mute all the other people just to kind of clean up the situation, or if people could mute themselves, that would be worthwhile.
And of course, unmute yourselves if you want to ask a question, but just it keeps the noise down in the meantime.
Yeah, otherwise it can be pretty problematic. So yeah, this is
Yeah, but then it mutes everyone. I muted everyone. Dang it.
Actually, I muted everyone, Trisha.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
And then I unmuted Milton really quickly.
and then I muted myself. So we're really looking at solving problems with permaculture design. Permaculture is primarily about making better decisions and a process to do that, making more aware decisions so we know more of how things work and the forces that affect us, and then really having specific goals for our decisions, which are the care of Earth, care of people, and care of the future, the ethics of permaculture. So we're looking at this picture of California. Everyone should know about California being in drought previously, and then pretty recently they had a lot of rains come through, and they're having flooding problems. So these are these are actually kind of the same problem together. They have or kind of similar solutions. In the bottom two slides, we actually have, this is in Michigan now, or the bottom two pictures, a group of people digging a swale, and this is on Dawn Farm. This is where we're going to have the course. And then an overhead view of the swales that we've installed in a particular field. This is an 8-acre field. And the way dealing with kind of an overabundance of rain versus then long periods of drought, if we can put that water somewhere, store it somewhere, and the best, least expensive place to store water is in the soil. And you have to be careful, you know, it's not perfect for everywhere. But that's one way that we could solve the problems, the drought problems, or alleviate some of the problems that the drought is causing in California. And William is a California native, so.
Speaking as a born and raised in Los Angeles, California is a situation ultimately when it comes to water where the major water sources in California are trucked in from 3 different locations with a very, very sizable debt to the Colorado River. And the infrastructure that's in place is certainly there for collecting surface runoff, but then it just channels it right back out. There's no real infrastructure for water collection and making use of every drop of water that falls on that landscape. And as a result, you do get these extremes where there's, you know, the drought is something that was utterly avoidable, you know, with good planning and good design. But as a result, we saw in the central coast of California where you were seeing farmland that was deflating like an air mattress, in some cases up to 2 feet, where it was just literally the land was just deflating. The aquifers were being pumped so dry that the land was just starting to sink. And as a result, you had these, you know, really arid landscapes. Everything got, you know, burnt out, which opens it up to mudslides and fire, and then subsequent mudslides. So it's just really, really, really poor planning. Whereas if we were to look at water retention strategies, capturing every drop of water that fell on that landscape through things like swales and good keyline design, these are things that would provide an abundance of water and collect and recharge those aquifers and make California water positive as opposed to so vulnerable as we currently see it.
And notice that a lot of the solutions that we're suggesting are not rain barrels or, you know, cisterns, that sort of catchment. They have their place. They're certainly much better for drinking water, but there's a limit to how much drinking water we really need. Versus irrigating our landscapes, which is the real primary problem here.
As we're fond of saying, the best place to store water is in the ground.
There is a very good book on in Israel, ancient Israel, on how the Nabatean kept it's in a desert, but how they made hill to receive every little drop of water, and they made canalization. So they design the countries, they use the design of the countryside to keep all the water to irrigate. In a desert, they call the Nabatean people.
Thanks. And moving on?
Yeah. No, I'm finished.
No, it's for Milton.
Yeah, the next slide. So talking about solving problems, a lot of the problems, especially here in the Rust Belt, we see that kind of urban decay, and even it could go so far as civil unrest. That's a Latin American country in the bottom left-hand slide. But you know, they were really developed in an earlier era, and generally they kind of have. So when we're done with them, what do they become? You know, what happens to them? And do the buildings that we build become blights in the landscape? Do the people that you know, worked in those buildings and kind of populated those areas, especially in the Rust Belt, do they become a problem? Do they riot? Do they, you know, that sort of thing? And how do we deal with those? And through permaculture, I would say, here's an example. This is actually Ann Arbor. This is the Reuse Center, and it's the urban, Terval's wood products. It's wood that was reclaimed from urban trees and milled into a usable form, and then that's available for sale. Lots of different kinds of woods. It's a really, really interesting place, and I know there's a project in Chicago too that does that.
Rebuilding exchange.
Yeah, and then also just for that kind of civil unrest piece of things, building community, and there's really not a better way to do it than around food. And a farmer's market is a really great example of that, bringing people together to support their farmers, which I don't see enough of, even in this kind of farm-rich area of the country. But in building community, your food is an important thing. Everyone's got to eat, and where it comes from, how you get that matters. And so if you can do that too at the same time, building community, then you can alleviate a lot of problems that way.
This is an example of what an axiom in permaculture that we use a lot, called the problem is the solution. And in these situations, it really is a matter of sort of flipping the script and getting outside the linear thinking that we normally fall victim to in cases of urban blight and things like pollution or infrastructure falling apart. In a lot of cases, that stems from a poor use and misallocation of resources. And if we were to value those resources and try to make use of them rather than creating a problem out of it, we can turn that into something positive, which is what things like rebuilding exchange and whatnot are all about. And our tendency to tear things down as soon as they fall out of fashion or out of vogue, rather than valuing them and restoring them. The idea of repair is something that's left our conversation a lot, owing to the sort of disposable culture that we're in. And in terms of civil unrest, absolutely the answer to that is community. Our best hedge against insecure times are one another. I think the people are the ultimate resource to other people as far as changing how we work and how we operate. And that goes from the interpersonal level, from things like nonviolent communication, all the way through community governance and things like sociocracy or consensus that change the way that we connect with one another and the way that we value each other's opinions. So these things have great utility, and careful and thoughtful design can really, really ameliorate a lot of the problems that we're dealing with currently. Moving on.
We actually have a question. Somebody raised their hand, and maybe we could take that question. I'm not sure exactly how to.
You can raise your hand.
I'm not sure how to take that question. So we'll aim to maybe take more questions at the end of the presentation. We only have 3 focused slides here, so we're really
exactly. So we'll move on to our next and then grab the questions.
Yep. Right. So we want to think about solving the problems at the home scale. Ultimately, when we have these really big problems, I think it's easy to shut down and just turn off and not want to engage about these problems. But when we work on the home scale, then it's something we can see directly the results from our efforts and start to see solutions to the problems that we face. So depending on where you live, you might have a lot of different options available to you. Just harvesting water off your roof can be a small step. Gets it out of the sewer system, which can be a problem. I know it's a problem here in Ann Arbor. They're having big kerfuffle about that. Or even then, after the rain barrel, channeling that water into your yard. The bottom 2 pictures are kind of earlier and then a little bit later pictures of Bill and Becky Wilson's yard at Midwest Permaculture. They took one downspout and kind of led that throughout their yard. Now they have very different soil than we do here in southeastern Michigan, but they've managed to almost capture in their yard almost 100% of the runoff from that part of the roof. And it's impacting. There's problems. There's on further down the hill from them by a community building. There's always a large puddle when it rains, and so they're reducing that problem by actually putting the water into their yards. And people ask about mosquito problems. In their experience, the water sinks in before mosquitoes can ever grow. So it hasn't been a problem. I think there was one or two times when it started to look like a problem, and then things kind of dried up. And plus, now adding the plants into the rain gardens, it sinks the water even faster. Thinking about, I personally live in a condo. I have very little land to play with, and so things like canning, making use of produce and preserving it, when there's plenty, and then using it when there's not, can be a really great way to solve problems. Essentially, having that food store. Say you're not. There's a tendency for people to think about prepping and having that large food store in case of an emergency. Well, what about if you lose your job? If you've got a month's food in your pantry, that can go a long way towards helping your family out, or 2 months food or 3 months food in a situation where someone loses their job. It can really relieve kind of that pressure of getting the next meal because you already have it.
The other thing I like to point out on this one is there's a big push on independence, on being food independent and economically independent. And those are attractive notions, but not altogether practical. When we think about it, our best bet against difficulty is interdependence. And that's, having a sense of community and knowing your neighbors and sharing the harvest in such a way that you're not trying to, really prepare for this apocalyptic sort of scenario, but you're much more, in a sense, prepared as a community, in that if you, for some reason, you do lose your job or you do come up on hard times, well, you've got other neighbors and friends who are able to share some of their abundance with you. And by the same token, if somebody else in your group, comes on difficult times, then you're prepared to help support them. It's a really different dynamic and a much more pleasant sort of scenario to live in, rather than having that constant fear that you have to be ahead, you have to be prepared, you have to be on top of everything, as opposed to having a little bit of ease, a little bit of calm in your own heart, that if you have a difficult moment or a difficult time, that you've got others around you that are going to help you get through it. And that's a very different mindset.
All right, should we move on here?
Sure.
So really the last two slides are just kind of for our course here, upcoming course. These are all the topics that we're going to cover within the course. Each topic has a short lecture. It ranges from like 15 to 40 minutes, depending upon how long-winded William, Rhonda, and I get on that subject.
To clarify.
Oh, hold on. There you go.
To clarify, it's the video lectures we're talking about.
Video lectures, that's right. They're we share them on YouTube. And there's two examples on the website, glpdc.info, so you can check those out and get a sense for what you're getting into if this is something that interests you. And the key thing is that through these different topics, you really are able to, and with the reading as well, through the lectures and the reading, we can hit the ground running, and we can try to exercise these topics rather than just talking about them. We can do something where you can touch them. We can make pickles, or you can dig a swale, or whatever whatever that topic happens to be. as opposed to, like I said, just talking about it, it really doesn't further the learning of most people, I think. And so getting into that nitty gritty is well worth it. And we're really excited about the design that we've had for our course. We've actually solved problems, or attempting to solve problems. I think we have successfully solved many problems through the design of our course.
Absolutely. And I know we have at least 3 of our PDC grads on this call today. And yeah, I mean, the way that we've structured this course is pretty unique and fairly different from a lot of more conventional permaculture courses, in that by adding the video and the reading component outside of class time, that does allow us to do a much deeper dive in the class. So I'd like to think that the quality of experience and education that the students get in this course is pretty deep. And I think that it showed in the design projects that we got back from everybody, and the engagement continues. We're actually implementing the designs that that the students produced during the course, which is also pretty unique. So I think we're all fairly proud of the results so far.
I think another problem that we ended up solving through the design of our course is that it's a regional course. It's not this very a site with people coming from all over the world, which happens in 99% of the courses. So after the course, there's a real cohort of people who continue to advance permaculture, in that location.
Yeah, there's a community that develops.
Yeah, and everyone's working on each other's projects. There's a lot of energy that I think is maintained through holding the courses in a specific location. Another thing we did is that the segments of the course are all on the weekends, and so that gives a lot of people that otherwise wouldn't be able to take even a week off or 2 weeks, off for a standard permaculture design course. It lets them really, well, first of all, it allows them to attend the course, and then it also, that longer time period gives them a chance to digest what they've learned and really sit with it, almost dream about it, to process all that information. I think it has a radically different result.
Absolutely. It definitely allows more time to consider and sort of ruminate on the stuff you learn, because it is a big brain dump. There's a lot of stuff that gets covered in the course of a weekend. And when you do it as a 2-week intensive, which is one of the more common ways, particularly for residential courses, that people experience it. I mean, that's how I learned it. You're kind of living and breathing it. You're stuck in it 24/7, and it's an awful lot to try to get through. I've heard it likened to drinking from a fire hose, as far as trying to get all that knowledge in. And I can attest to it, that it is how it feels. But in this case, I think it's a lot easier to take that time. You're only doing the 1 weekend a month, and that gives you a lot of time to kind of go back over things and study, review, and then as you're getting on toward the design projects, you actually have your design team to discuss these things with and kind of ponder on. So it's a pretty great format. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for being here. It was fun.
Thank you.
glpdc.info
We'll send you to the host of our next
Permaculture Design Certificate course.